KRLT 93.9 The Lake. Good morning, Tahoe. It is a Professional Women Wednesday. I guess I just treated her to some fine coffee on this Wednesday morning. Good morning. Now, you're still mayor, technically, right?
I am mayor.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I've been saying all morning.
Yes. Thanks for the coffee.
You're welcome. Thank you, Clyde's Roasting Company, for the fine coffee. Good stuff. Here's, have a cheers right there.
Cheers.
Okay. So it's Wendy David. Now, I know right off the bat, I know you've been involved with the educational system for a long time.
Long time, many, many years. I was on the school board for about 17 years and, raised 4 kids. So by, just you kind of fall into it. And then it's a very important part of my life and my history. Yeah.
Has that served you well as far as being on the council? Because sometimes...
the council is very different,
right.
But it's certainly the leadership role that I took and working with the community, problem solving, decision making, really trying to move your community forward in education really set the course for me wanting to move our city forward as well.
Is this your first time as a city councilor, I think?
So it's my first term, yes. I'm finishing my first 4 years as a city council person, and after a lot of reflection, decided to dive back into the deep end.
Really? Now, it's interesting you said that, is because some of the new folks I know who are running said that they felt like things have been moving slowly, and that's why they wanted to run for it. Because I only bring this up because I don't know about the whole closed session thing, but people tend to question what's going on, Right. And then a ballot initiative, and to me it just means, okay, this organization isn't moving quick enough. Let's see if we can expedite it by putting out a ballot or whatnot.
Yeah. Democracy is messy, and it's. And part of it is because it's a democracy and people have a right, they're protected by being able to, if they disagree with something, go forward. And so I would agree with most people that it's also, it tends to be slow because there's a lot of public input. And that's good. We have a community that, as you know, is very vocal and cares a lot about where they live as much as those of us that run for public office. We run because we care about Tahoe. They bring forward their ideas because they care as well. So it is, I would agree that some things can be slow, but I would, Howie, ask people to look back at the last 4 years. We are in a renaissance of transformation. So if you look at economic development, for instance, there's been a lot of progress in certain areas.
Right. Now there's some would say, and it seems like just in the last year, though, there's been some I don't want to say in-house bickering, but just a lot of disagreement on certain things, on how things were handled. I don't want to dwell into it, but so certain people who were let go and stuff like that. I don't know if it's because does everything have to be closed session? Is it because of the Brown Act? Is that why?
So if it's a personnel issue, of course, we protect people. It's just like in other workplaces, your personnel files are protected, personnel issues are protected. So when you're dealing with people, and I agree, it's frustrating because it's such a public entity that the public would like to know everything. Yeah. But people have a right to have their personnel issues protected. And so, it was a tumultuous year. I would admit that. And people have asked me about my leadership since I was the mayor during some of that time. And my answer is that, during tumultuous times, I think I lifted up my leadership even more to be a rational and reasonable and professional person throughout. And change is hard. And, I tried to lead us through that change with grace and with professionalism.
Now, I know there's a lot of different things that are going on right now, but some of the highlight ones, same thing I asked Cody yesterday, was the ballot measure, yay or nay on Measure T, and if yay, how is that going to adversely affect the city's budget? I think it would be a $3 million shortfall.
Yeah, just about.
Yeah. And if not, it's still a wake-up call that there could be another ballot initiative. So how would the council step up to increase? Because it does seem like they were slow in getting the enforcement, to getting folks out there. I had a personal issue out in the county and calling that lady who's also the tax lady out there.
That's kind of a strange
That was
thing, huh?
weird. So I kind of had to take matters in my own hand.
Yeah.
And they trust me. They don't want to rent there anymore. But how do you first off, yay or nay on Measure T, and how will you address that?
Right. So I'm a no on Measure T. I think that it's been less than a year since we put in our tough enforcement. It really is working, and I agree. It took a while to get to this, but things change and they happen, and then you're like, wow, we now have this many VHRs and we need to enforce. I think, however, I like that because I call myself a no however or a no but because we need to continue to look at this, and I firmly believe that we I think we do need to do a descending cap.
Yeah, that's where I want to cut in because every time I hear someone say we need to look at this, I think you guys have looked at it long enough.
We have.
How do you attack it?
So one of the ways I'd like to attack it is, we want our visitors to be able to, get out of their cars, stay in a VHR if they want to.
Right.
If we encourage more VHRs in our tourist core area, even expand our tourist core area a little bit further down Highway 50, I think for every new VHR you have in the tourist core area, you start subtracting them in the residential area. A 1 to 2. So you get a new license, say those new VHRs that'll probably get licenses up above Harrah's, that are being built.
Right.
If they each got a VHR license, so say there's, I don't know how many, but let's guess there's 26 of them.
Right.
Then you'd take away, double that, 52 or 54 from the residential. You'd have a descending cap in our residential as you encourage them in the other area. It wouldn't have the impact on our budget that Measure T would have, but you'd still be slowly bringing them out. A very sudden departure of VHRs, I think, would hurt property owners, hurt those that have invested, and of course hurt our city budget. So trying to look at ways of achieving some of what the residents want to achieve in a slightly different way.
Now, have you ever driven around with other council members to the neighborhoods where people talk about it and see?
I live in one. I'm completely surrounded by VHRs.
So you are, and you have nothing to do as far as like a management company or?
Oh, no.
Okay, so you wouldn't have to recuse yourself or?
Not at all. Yeah.
That's got to be, I know, a touchy issue because you're trying to balance property rights of that person, and yet I
would say it's the most complicated issue
who wants a hotel in a neighborhood? But then that, and do you limit the size of McMansions or because?
No, that's a separate issue, and it's an issue that the new council might want to look at. That's a zoning issue and a building permit issue, and those kinds of things, and. That's a separate topic, but it's a topic that we're hearing more and more that the community might want us to look at. Now,
as far as I always like, obviously living in a small town, you see everybody, and for those that don't make it to the council meetings, they probably come up to you and say, "Hey, corner you, whatever," and ask you this. Other than the VHR, what is the biggest concern that has to be tackled? I know cannabis is one, and that's the other thing. That's the other thing I don't understand too. Is that my recollection would be like, if what is it going to take? You always hear about these other states and these towns where once they legalize it, like Oregon and California, obviously California, but Colorado, it seemed like it wiped out any debts. How do we keep it from a layman's point of view? If we do have the cannabis and you could buy and sell and all that, how do we keep that money to just help offset our deficit up here in the city? Can you do that, or do you have to? Is it a state thing you have to jump?
Well,
through?
you have to pay. There's taxes,
right?
And there's heavy state taxes, but your local municipality can also pass a tax initiative.
Right.
That's just for cannabis users. Right now, if we do development agreements, part of that development agreement is that your profits then go back into the community, back into nonprofits, back into public safety, things like that. So yes, you can.
Can you do that? And do you guys decide where that's going to go, where those funds can be allocated once you've already met the requirements from the state and whatnot?
Right, you can.
You can do that?
You can with a development agreement.
So why the referendums on it? I always hear about referendums.
Yeah. Well, the referendum is, we have one cannabis business here. The referendum is really all in relationship to that one business that is not in an area that they feel is zoned the way they want it to be zoned, that they wouldn't be allowed to have the kind of business that they've had for the last 10 years. So the referendum would not be out there, would not be happening if we didn't already have one established cannabis business that's not happy with the ordinance as it stands right now.
Because I've heard that there's like several folks that they've been waiting to get a license.
There are many local people.
And they're just being put on hold.
They are, and they've invested in property. Perhaps
that's what I mean.
They've
Is it you guys that decide yay or nay on whether or not they can open up shop?
Well, in our ordinance is a rubric and a very objective point scale of anybody that would apply for that, with also a local preference added in, because we understand if you're a local and you're investing in our community, we want to support that as well. But it is part of the ordinance. The ordinance that now is on hold, that we need to bring back with either substantive changes, or we need to take the ordinance to the voters and ask them if they want to vote on this ordinance or not. So like we said a few minutes ago, democracy and the ability of the public is paramount in decisions.
Just playing devil's advocate, I look at the measure that's a ballot because, it was slow, and then the voters voted yes, I think by 64%, if I'm not mistaken.
In Tahoe,
I
think we were 64 or
64% for
legalizing.
Yeah,
cannabis.
legalizing.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, like, okay, we voted this, got it done, boom, we voted on that, boom, got it done. So why so bogged down in the red tape? Is it just the five of you? I know there's other agencies you probably have to deal with.
We did a lot of community input. We had a big cannabis subcommittee of, I think, maybe 15 people. Also, this is a big change for communities. This is a big change. You want to do it right, and so we took our time. We had a lot of community input. We brought it back to the council, and then, of course, it had to go through the steps. During that time, in our city council meetings, we probably had 50 people at each meeting, and a lot that were giving us input on cannabis. So you're right, Howie. It takes time, and I know it's frustrating for some. It's frustrating for us also, of going through the entire process and then having it taken off the table. So, but that's part of the process.
Now with the winter coming up, I'm always reminded of obviously you don't know what kind of winter it's going to get, because I've had meteorologists on the show. They can't seem to say yay or nay on if it's going to be a big one. How potholes, number one.
Yeah, well, you started to ask me what was the other next biggest topic.
Is that?
And that is roads.
I had to bring it up.
I'm glad you brought it up, because this is the topic of the community, regardless of whether you might be in favor of cannabis or you're in favor of another. Everybody drives the roads.
Yeah.
Everybody has to drive roads that are in bad shape. Everybody wants to know, what can we do as a council? What can we do as a city? What can we do as a community to improve our roads?
I think it was Tom Davis that said, I went to one meeting, he said they should allocate all the cannabis taxes that would pay for it. I mean, what did he say? Pot for potholes. I said, can you do that? I mean, can you?
I love this slogan, and you probably could. Although cannabis also will bring other public issues that we're going to want to have. So we want to have drug education in our schools, for instance. You want to have enforcement of the rules that'll come along with cannabis. So, but you perhaps could have a percentage, once you've taken care of the things that you're going to need.
And you guys decide that, right? You decide that,
we
right?
Do.
And so can you just boom, get right on I mean.
Well, we can, but again, I don't decide it. The five of us, but also it's the public. So public input again.
Another ballot?
I hope not.
Hope not. And the last thing I'll say about it was I went to one meeting, and I'm not going to mention names, but okay, the police chief was, even though it passed, it seemed like there was those that it said they weren't for it. I don't know if it was personal reasons or whatnot, but you got to put that aside and go with what the folks want, I
think from a law enforcement point of view,
and I understand
they see they kind of see the worst side of, of a lot of issues. Our educational community was not big in favor because of the impact. We know that underage, when your brain isn't fully developed, that,
I went to one of those meetings.
Right, it can have a big
I want to raise my hand and say, look, some of us decide not to have a kid so we can hit a bong.
Exactly.
Can we just vote on this and make it happen?
So, our educational community, our health community, our law enforcement community, they were part of the planning, but they also had a lot of concerns. So you are balancing. It's balancing a delicate topic for sure. I want to go back to roads for a second because I think some of the candidates have talked about that we haven't done anything about roads, and I want to remind everybody that we went out twice during the last 4 years for roads initiatives. First was for a general tax to improve our roads, and it was a half-cent sales tax, and it did not pass. We went back out with a designated tax, which was the 66.6% that you had to get, and that would have restricted it all to roads. That got the majority of 56%, but it couldn't get over that threshold. So we're going to really need our community to help us too, because when it costs $3 to $4 million a year to fix your roads, we're going to, and I think there's other things we can talk about and think about, but it's going to involve, our community at some point.
I think that's what kind of ticked off the community was like, look, you guys have a budget, and that's obviously you can see what that is. It's I go to your site, and it's like, now you want us to cough up more money. Can you guys not get your act together to balance this and put X amount toward this and that? Do you think you could just tax us so we'll pay for?
It's no different from the budget we have at our house. You could need your driveway replaced or whatever, but you're like, that's not, it's not in my monthly budget to put in, $3,000 or whatever for that. We are listening. We do know we are going back out. This next council, I believe in all the, the panels and the forums I've gone to, I think all 9 candidates agree that roads are one of our number one issues. So I think the community is going to see great effort in that regards. And we have asked to allocate, in the meantime, some one-time money. What also the public needs to know is we could allocate some one-time money. We need ongoing money to fix our roads. Not one one-time little pot of money is going to do it.
Now, I know this is going to be a tough one, it might be. I don't even know if you as being the council, can even address this. Housing, as you know, I get calls from so many employers that say, you know what, we can find qualified candidates, but they just don't know where to stay. What in a realistic world, that's the city council, what is it really that the 5 of you can do? Because I know there's vacant, what they call it, places that are eyesores. Is there any way to use that? Or you have to go through more?
Are you talking about the motels?
Yeah.
So we do have, it's called our SRO program, and it's single room occupancy, and there have been hotels, and we have an ordinance around that are able to transition into small, basically apartments, and they have to have a kitchenette, they have to have they have to have a separate sink for washing dishes, they have to have a place to cook food, they have to have a place to keep food cold, and there are several entities, even Edgewood Tahoe, for instance, bought an entire motel, and they transposed that motel
for their employees.
Yeah. And I was able to walk through that, and very nice. Took 2 hotel rooms, made them into one small apartment, and because they were having the same problems, and this way their workers can live there.
Did it fix the problem for
them?
For them, yeah.
For them,
is there a way to take? There's a way to take that model.
So other motels have taken that model and done it. I think the Matterhorn is another one that took that model and did it. There's a few others, the Mark Twain, I believe. Anyway, we all know these names from 40 years of seeing them. So that's one way. The other thing that the city can do is we can look at our policies and then see where can we be flexible in our policy so that a developer can come in, build low-income housing, but still make the profit they need to make. One of the issues we're looking at is the parking regulations. So if you have to have room for 2 cars to park, with every apartment that you build, that brings that cost way up. So we're looking at the California standards for parking, which are less stringent than ours, and seeing, can we change that? We're looking at density. We have such restrictions with our zoning and TRPA. Can we go up another story? That would bring down that cost for the developer. So we're lots of housing groups. We had a great policy meeting with everybody in town, TRPA, Edgewood, the county, the city. So we're really working behind the scenes to see how can we have policies and then get out of the way, so that they can build. Don't have so many rules that you can't come in and build. People are interested. Developers are interested. We just need to get them on the ground.
I'm motivated when you say that. I just want to get the other 4 to get their act together.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really give us your spiel. Give us why we should vote for Wendy David. Re-elect Wendy David.
Thanks. Well, I'm asking for your vote. I want you to know that I've been 100% committed to the future of our city, to the community. I've been this way for decades, the last 40 years. You can count on me doing the same for this city this next term. I'm a natural leader. I am professional at all times, and I have a plan, and part of my plan is we need a long-term vision. We have not had that in a long time. 10 to 20 years vision plan that is a housing plan, is a public transit plan. We're overwhelmed with our visitors. We're overwhelmed with the cars. How can we get them here, get them up to Emerald Bay, get them out to wherever they want to go, but get them out of their private cars? So that's just part of it. But roads, public service, all those things are on our agenda, and I'm ready to hit the ground running again, and with my history. And
where would you like people to go to get more information?
Please go to my website at www.electwendydavid.com. So,
Wendy, thanks for coming down and sitting through the ring of fire.
Yes. Howie, thank you.